up against the flywheel. So when you're going down the road, this thing is pressing, the pressure plate's pressing the disc up against the flywheel, and they all run together at the same speed. This thing is bolted to the flywheel. I think there's a flywheel right there, which is on the back of the engine, and the pressure plate bolts to it. But this thing is only on the transmission. It somehow fits on there.
You can't figure it out?
There.
So where's the throw-out bearing?
The throwout bearing,
I've heard of all of them, I've never seen it.
the throwout bearing is going to push on here, and when it pushes down, it essentially levers this and pulls it back. So it pulls it back away from the flywheel. It pulls the pressure plate back away from the flywheel and lets the clutch disc go free. And this kind of clutch, the newer kind, it's a diaphragm spring in place of all those coil springs that are inside there. This
Presumably a superior design.
it's a superior design because it's a lot smoother acting, and almost any newer car has this besides Alfa Romeo. They all have diaphragm clutches now because they kind of engage smoothly. They also, you can see there's less parts, so they're cheaper.
More reliable.
But you can't use that on the,
They're not interchangeable.
After what year did Alpha use what? After what year?
69 and newer.
Hydraulic clutches.
Yeah, anyone that has a hydraulic clutch, I guess that was part of the change, but the diaphragm clutch is more reliable, and
Suppose.
it is.
Yeah.
These things, I mean, for racing,
so if I have my foot on the clutch and hear that whirring noise,
okay,
Had to replace it.
I thought that was the throw-out bearing.
the throwout bearing
Yeah, had to replace it.
is what pushes on it pushes on here. So the noise could be if the bearing is starting to seize, it's starting to chew into these things, or just the bearing itself is noisy. So if it makes a noise when you push down on the clutch,
After a while, you'd be sick.
and if it's quiet, yeah, it's the throwout bearing itself. This bell housing, this is from an older car, so it has a mechanical linkage that pushes the throwout bearing forward. So when you put your foot down on the clutch, it pulls that back and it forces the throwout bearing forward. And we don't have any of those to show.
I want my money back.
Yeah, there's if it's a hydraulic one, an arm comes in from the side and pivots and does essentially the same thing. It pushes forward on the pressure plate. So, as you're going to see later, if this thing doesn't pull back far enough to let this thing go free, then this, which is connected to the transmission, it's going to grind into gear. So if your car is standing still and it grinds into reverse or grinds into first a little bit, it's not the transmission's fault. It's the clutch isn't disengaging all the way. And there's a million reasons why it won't. But
You review those?
yeah. I'll review the number one reason, I think, is that this thing has to be free on the splines to move a little tiny bit to get away from the sandwich of being between this pressure plate and the flywheel. When you pull this back, this has to come back just a skosh, so it's not dragging on the pressure plate or the flywheel. Otherwise, this thing keeps turning, and then when you try to put it in gear, it grinds a little bit. It has nothing to do with the synchro mesh or whatnot. this shaft needs to be stopped. If the wheels are stopped, this needs to be stopped in order to put it in gear.
You lose the splines when you put a clutch in?
You should, yes, definitely.
But very, very little.
Yeah,
Because if you put too much, you
Grease.
then it
Right.
flings out and gets on the,
and it doesn't work.
You get a little grease on there and it starts slipping.
yeah,
Yeah, see, the flywheel doesn't move in and out. The
pressure.
pressure plate does, so the friction just has to back off from the flywheel just a hair or it'll drag.
Yeah,
That's what you're saying. So it's binding up to do that.
yes. So the disc needs to be free. So before you put the thing together, if you're putting a new clutch in there, you should put this on here like I struggled to do, and make sure that it goes on there nicely and that it's free to move back and forth. And then sometimes with a new clutch, they give you a little packet of grease, which is supposedly the right kind of grease and the right amount to grease this all up so that it does slip. And you should clean these grooves out of old caked up grease to make sure that that is going to work well. So this transmission is from a 67, but other than the bell housing, they all kind of look the same, especially inside. And you can- Is it bolted together? Hold it down, Jim.
There it goes.
So this thing up here is the thing that the shift lever is attached to. And so it has a little finger that's going to go down into these shift rails so that it can shift the gears. So if we want to put it in first, we tilt that finger over here so it's going to go into this rail, and then it's going to shift. That would be second. Backward. And here's first. And then when you don't have any pressure on the shift lever, it kind of sits in the middle one, which is third and fourth. And then when you push it over this way, then it's in that finger, and that's fifth and reverse. So you can see here, here's the only tool that you need to take these apart. Yeah, hold that down.
There you go.
It's like two halves.
He's taking it.
Popping out.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's it.
Many
I could
reasons
do
for
that.
that. Too.
Yeah, me too. I got a mallet.
So, this is the same, like I say, this is the same as a Ford transmission in the layout of the gears and stuff. And the good thing about an Alfa transmission is that it's called a split case. You can take the top off and all the gears are here for us to look at. Where behind you on the floor, there's an old devil of a transmission together. That's a tunnel case transmission. That was used before 57, Tom?
59 was when they switched.
Really? 59. Had these tunnel case kinds of transmissions.
More like an old
Which-
Chevy or Ford trend.
Yeah, which you have in there's a tunnel because you have to take the gears out the end, and once they're out, then they're kind of fall all apart. You can't really see how it works. So, this is called a constant mesh transmission, and right now we're in neutral. So the front shaft is turning and the back shaft, which is going to the back wheels, is standing still. But all the gears are turning because they're in constant mesh. So when we want to shift to first, we're going to shift this thing here. And what that does is it locks this gear onto the shaft. Let me take this out for a second. This thing is called the counter shaft or the lay shaft. And see, all these gears are solid. They don't turn individually at all. But all these gears turn individually. They're free on the shaft. Except now we put this one into gear, we've locked that one onto the shaft. So this is first, second, third, fourth, and back here is fifth. These transmissions started off as 4 speeds, and they had all the gears inside. And then when they decided to have fifth, they said, well, we got room for it back here. This is
An
a 5.
afterthought.
Is it the first one that's always locked to the shaft, so it'll turn
Yes. Yes.
the lay shaft?
Show them the gear,
Alright.
show them the pathway.
Yes. That's where we're coming to. Now it's in first gear, and that's going to stay there.
In fourth gear, the input shaft is locked to the output shaft, and the counter
Yes.
shaft is just along for the
So
ride.
this thing is called the input shaft, but it also serves as fourth gear.
1 to 1.
Right, 1 to 1. So this thing is spinning by itself, but because it's engaged to these guys, it's going to turn. It's turning this whole thing all the time with the same little gear reduction. So here it's coming in here, and now it's because none of these are engaged up here. Nothing's going on. But so we'll come back to that. in a
No,
second.
I'm pushing.
How that works. So, but all these gears are connected to this main shaft. So these guys are called the shift forks because they look kind of like a fork. Okay, so
It's about the time I start throwing wrenches and swearing.
I'm making it look hard on
Get a
purpose.
box.
Are you going to explain that problem?
Yeah. So let's go into first gear again. So right now all these guys are free on the thing, but we know that this is solid here. So the power is going to come in here, and it's going to go through this little gear reduction because this one's littler than that one. And then when we put it in first, we're locking the first gear onto the main shaft. So the power comes here, it goes down here, and because now all these gears are turning, then it goes here, and it goes between here and here, the big old reduction, and then it goes out.
This
So-
looks still engaged.
It is, it's always engaged. It's
Ah.
coming here,
Yeah.
going across here, and then coming back up. These other gears aren't engaged, so they're turning, but they're not doing anything. These other guys are just going along for the ride. The only 4 that are doing something. You have a little reduction here, and a big reduction here for first gear, low gear. So the input is turning a lot faster than the output. Three times as fast.